This is, I've been needing to do this probably for a little while, but it's good that we're doing it today and making up for lost time. I never thought I'd see the day we'd be having a conversation like this in the United States Senate. Really doesn't make a lot of sense. Bottom line, we've lost our mind. Thanks to my colleagues here, Cynthia Loomis and Katie Britt, and we'll have Cindy Hyde-Smith here sooner than later. Thanks for them joining. Thanks, H, for you doing this. This is awesome. This is a great platform, and what a better place to do this right in the capital of the United States. Most of you probably know that I've coached for about 40 years, and I've seen the good and bad and indifferent. But the one good thing I've seen is Title IX over the last 50-something years of what it's done for girls and women's sports. It's been unbelievable. One of the best things that's ever come out of this building is Title IX and making equal opportunities. You know, for the first time, girls had the opportunity for facilities, same amount of coaches as men and boys, same number of sports, which I think is huge, but also scholarships, the ability to receive a scholarship and go to college. And there's nothing better than playing in college or playing in high school and being with teammates, the things that you learn, the things that you're exposed to. You know, I saw hardworking young women as well as men when I first started coaching. I coached junior girls basketball. What an experience. My gosh. Young coach out of college, and I'm thinking, what the heck have I gotten into? But it was a great experience. You know, even as a coach, I keep up with all the players that I played with in college and high school, but as a coach, the same thing. You keep up with all the young men and young women that you're exposed to. Even in football, in college football, I had 10 or 15, 20 young women that worked within our athletic department in terms of trainers, managers, equipment, wait staff, and it's growing and growing in that area. The only way to keep your job as a coach, and everybody needs to understand this, now that we're talking about men, possibly in women's sports. Coaches are going to coach to win. And I don't want it to get to a situation where scholarships are given out to, in women's sports in college, to men. I don't want it to get to that point. And that's one of the things that we have really got to fight against. And again, I want to say this, I'm not against anybody. You are who you are. This country gives you a free opportunity to believe in what you want to believe in. That's what our Constitution says. But we need to go by the science about determining men and women in sports and the division of why we have a division of men and women's sports. We need to keep that in mind. So, as a coach, you got to understand too, in college sports, there is tens of billions of dollars on the line for success in sports. And so I don't want this to get to a point where men get the opportunities that young girls and women have had or should have, but don't have because of the money that's put into this. We don't need to get to that point. And that's the reason I think it's so important that we have talks like this. Now we have a bill on the floor, or not on the floor, but that we have pushed out in the House and the Senate, Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. And basically that's what that says. So President Biden wants to say that his agenda that he can cut off federal funding if you don't allow men and women's sports. Well, mine says just the opposite, that we do not allow federal funding, for if men play in women's sports. So we got a huge discussion here, and we disagree so much on this. So Title IX, as we have this talk here today, Title IX is under attack. We're going to lose a lot of women's sports if this happens. We don't want to lose the funding. There's other things that are happening in college sports, such as NIL, that I'm very concerned about college sports having the funding if we continue down this road, because donations are going to go to athletes instead of facilities. And who's going to get left out first? Because funding is Olympic sports and women's sports. We do not want that to happen. So thanks for being here today, and let's have a good discussion, and hopefully we can bring some things to light. So, Sage, you're gonna monitor this situation?
Allegedly, I think I'm second though to the bosses in charge here. But did you have a couple?
Okay.
Yeah, no, just I'll say a few things. First, want to thank my senior senator, Coach Tuberville, for putting this together. He has been a leader on this from
Not
day
too
one.
senior though. That's senior salary.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. You know, and as a mom, I have my daughter and my son both play sports. And I think there are only 3 women in the whole U.S. Senate that have school-age kids. And I am the only Republican female that has school-age kids in the Senate. And watching my daughter learn and grow and get opportunities to lead, get opportunities to try and fail, get opportunities to build a skill set that you only build on teams and on the court or off of it is truly remarkable. And so when you think about that being put in jeopardy, it brings a new light to it. I believe this is about fairness and it's about safety. And I think Senator Tuberville said it beautifully. This isn't against anything. This is just about women having the opportunity to grow, learn, and to thrive. And I think Title IX has done such a tremendous job. And it's interesting because for years, so many people on both sides of the aisle fought for this, fought for women to be able to excel. And so to see right now that that we seem to be the ones that are having to fight to preserve that, gives you concern about moving forward, which is why these things are so important. We appreciate you lending your voice into the conversation so that we can learn and do better and be better. And again, Senator Tuberville, thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you. Cynthia?
I too want to thank Coach Tuberville because he can bring to light issues that I got to say I've struggled with my whole life to bring about. I'm the same age as Coach Tuberville. We were born the same year. When I was in high school, there were no intramural women's sports, none, 0. We could play in the gym, intramural after school, but there was no way for women to compete against each other. We couldn't be in FFA. We couldn't be in Key Club. Everything was separate. I was a pre-Title IX high school student. My daughter, of course, was a post-Title IX high school student. She competed and in the state title at women's tennis, and then went to college and played tennis in college. She got better training athletically, in teams, mentally, in competition, in sportsmanship, in confidence, in trying and failing and getting back up and winning again. I got some of that in 4-H, but sports brings out a whole different level in developing bodies and minds simultaneously, and in the ability to work with other people in a very positive endeavor. And Coach got to see that. I've listened to Coach speak about what he did as a coach. And he always talks about it like, I wasn't coaching sports. I was developing young men. And that's what women's sports does. It develops young women. And there's no substitute for that. So if you take that away from women, because now you've decided that there's a group of people who should have the advantages of competing at the very top level, even though they're competing in a category that was not designed for them. Women's sports is designed for women. And to allow people's physiology, that's what I studied in college. Physiology makes a difference in sports. Men's hips are a line narrower. When they get to the starting blocks, they have a physiological advantage to win. women should compete against women at the highest level of their physiological ability to succeed. That's what we want for women. And we don't want to deny trans people the right to compete. Compete in your own category, have an open class, but don't compete against biological women. This is an important issue for now because it's about preserving what we've done for women with Title IX and building on it. So, Coach, thank you so much for what you're doing here. This is a good thing you're doing. And what you all are doing to protect women's sports and allowing scholarships to be awarded to women who have achieved at the highest level of success that women can possibly achieve when competing against each other. Good for you, and thank you for what you do.
Am I allowed to clap down
Yeah.
here? I don't know the role. I've never been in any of these buildings.
You're running the show.
And that's, it's dangerous. People watching might agree with you. It is truly an honor for me, yes, starting with you, because you are the ones that are out here on the front lines and fighting, and I can't wait to hear from you. And of course, it starts with you as well, because you're our voices, and I'm so grateful. I just want to give a quick perspective as to why I care so much. And it actually goes back to, well, first of all, I was born in 1972. So that's Title IX. That's the beginning. And then when I announced to my parents at the dinner table in 1984 that I wanted to be a sportscaster when I grew up, you know, my parents were the most supportive, so incredible. But in 1984, there weren't many women doing that at all, locally, nationally, certainly no women who looked like me. So it was definitely a dream that through a lot of, you know, hard work, certainly, but encouragement from many people who did believe women had a space in the TV world. It happened, and I've been able to live out my dream. During that time, it was incredible to go from the only woman in a locker room, whether it be NFL, NHL, all of it, to many. And then when you watch TV and you watch everything online now, there are women everywhere in college who have these opportunities, and it is beautiful to see. So I've seen such progress. And then while living out my dream, being able to be part of covering women and celebrating women and watching my former employer, ESPN, owned of course by Disney with ABC, go all in on it and spend tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to invest into women's sports. Look at what's happened in women's college basketball the last couple of years. The ratings are insane. The game is great. I talk to a lot of NBA players who say the women's skill set is better than the men. I mean, athletically, this is science, right? Let's stop denying. Men are going to be better. They're physically stronger. The DNA just says that. That's how God made us. It's a fact. But the women's skill set in basketball is another level. And so I love the progress. I love the growth. I was at ESPN from 2007 to 2023. In 2010 was part of something I think I had the most fun, but was also the most proud of. And that was the start of ESPN W for women. And so to see that progress, and I mean, I was basically the face of it for 11 years until I got myself in trouble. And the W meant something. And it took time for the founders of that to get the approval financially to make this a summit for 3 days a year, just about women, and bringing in politicians, bringing in athletic directors and conference commissioners and athletes and coaches. And it was all a celebration of women and pumping up ratings and making sure that we could try to get that pay more equal, female athletes compared to men. We had people like Megan Rapinoe on those panels. Many women, of course, so supportive of equality. And to see Megan out there and being an idol for millions of young girls, soccer players, has been incredible. Backtrack, I mean, I was a journalist in 1999, the 99ers, and that women's team that won the World Cup. And with Julie Foudy and an incredible time that did what? Brought our country together. And this was young women who were doing it. So the progress has been a blessing to watch from the sidelines, because I didn't listen. You asked me earlier, Coach, it's a waste of height. I did not get those athletic genes. My next life, I'm convinced. Second best thing is to what? Is to talk about it and to be around greatness like you and like your daughter. So I think that's what's been most heartbreaking, is to see the backtracking. I've asked myself why. I don't know why. I don't know why. If anything, I think personally there's some deep-rooted ugliness, evil forces. I mean, people might not like that word. To me, there's no other explanation. I don't know what it is. Something is there. And at this point, I don't care. why. The fact is that it's wrong. So to go from 2010, seeing that celebration, and Megan Rapinoe on that set with us, that stage being live streamed across the country, to then calling me out, calling Martina Navratilova out for saying we are anti-trans and promoting violence against trans people by standing up for women's sports, it makes no sense. The problem is when people with a voice like her, who has had an incredible career, they have that platform and people are afraid to go against them because we know that cancel culture is real. I don't know how many times I've been canceled, but I'm still breathing somehow. I'm like, go for it. You can't hurt me now. But that's the only hope we have, is if people get through that fear, and not to start a fight, but to have that conversation. That is exactly what is not happening. And by the way, my kids, all three were born right here in the nation's capital, 2 girls. I have no horse in this race. My kids' athletic careers are over. I never had it. So this is not about someone in my family. This is about right and wrong. And for all these women that I've had the honor of covering and encouraging bosses and producers to, no, let's move up that WNBA highlight. Let's move this up. Let's have this interview. And they did it. So how it started to go backwards is beyond me. I do think that we have to go deeper, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this later, but go deeper on some of the repercussions if we continue to allow it. We have seen it, but I think sometimes the videos are kind of tucked away and hidden, and all the ways on the internet that you can make things go away. We need to see those videos of young women, the physicality of it, of getting hurt at times. We need to have the Paula Scanlons out there and the Riley Gaines saying no, even though it's so scary. And I watched when you first hit online and on television, and was in tears. So proud of you, because you're how old now? 24. Right. Like, when I was 24, this was not happening, So people like you all of us must push through that fear. And by the way, it isn't just the athletes and the mothers and the coaches and the lawmakers. It is men. It is men too, because men with fathers who have daughters out there. And I know that if my kids were out there competing, I would be a meme. I would be in trouble and probably arrested, because it is just wrong. So we're not going to ignore the science. I'll add this, and then I promise I'll be quiet. But you get me going, and I'm so upset. It's fascinating how it's only going one direction, isn't it? Are there any NBA players saying I want to go play in the WNBA? No. What about any other sport? It's only happening in one direction. Why? Because we all know the differences there. We must push through our fear. We must continue to talk to our neighbors and come together, the athletes. I know you've done that, and there's a groundswell. People on both sides of the aisle, you look at the statistics, 75, 80%, really are on the same page with this. So it's kind of now or never, if you ask me, and we have to push through the fear. We have to have the C word that people hate, have that conversation and keep talking. This is one thing, we are right. And if we don't do it now, I think that we will always regret it. So honored to be here, and to get the conversation started in a little bit of what do we do? Because we have to have tangible action items, or else this is going to continue to go downhill quickly. So Miss Katie Mullins, by the way, yes, mom, proud mom of Lily Mullins, an NCAA athlete, captain of the Roanoke women's swim team. And she bravely spoke out as well after a man joined her team. We're so glad you're here speaking for her and many others.
Thank you. She was able to get her team to stand with her together, which was a different thing that hadn't happened before. So she was able to get 10 of them to come together. But I'll begin. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to be here and to share my daughter's story with you. It's a privilege to be here in Washington and with members of the Senate. And thank you, Senator Tuberville, for bringing about this important conversation about Title IX. As you said, my name is Katie Mullins, and my daughter is a collegiate athlete. She is a member of the Roanoke College swim team in Virginia, and it's been difficult for my daughter and our entire family as we have watched the hard work that Lily has put into swimming be compromised and her dreams become nightmares. For me, this nightmare started last summer. As a captain on the Roanoke team, Lily was making nameplates for the girls on her team, and she had to make a nameplate for member on the roster who a year prior was on the men's team, who is now going to be on the women's team. We've all become too familiar with men competing unfairly and unjustly in women's sports. And women are put at risk and robbed of opportunity when this happens, but it's still happening. It happened to my daughter, it happened to her teammates, and our girls were told not to speak up. They were told that they would be labeled, they would face academic and professional repercussions if they did. They were told if they didn't like it, they could just leave. My daughter and her teammates began to ask whether college swimming was even worth it. They were acutely aware of the unfairness, and they just didn't want to participate in the fraud that they knew that it was. And Lily loved Roanoke. So I knew how bad it got for her when she was not 8. She told me, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to have a man in a women's practice with me every day, in the pool with me every day. I don't want to walk out onto a pool deck with other teams and have them believe that I am supporting this lot when it's a fraud. It's a cheat. I don't think I can do it. Well, Lily wasn't alone. And I think to think that having a man on a women's team doesn't affect our young women is to just ignore an ugly, ugly truth that how these girls went through affected them dramatically. My daughter shared with me that she would be so upset and so nervous that she would become so physically ill, so anxious that she would throw up so violently that blood would come out her mouth and her nose and hit the back of the bathroom wall. And she would just fall to the floor. I'm a good person. I'm a good person. That is the level of aggressive, emotional, physical turmoil that this takes on our girls. I barely recognized my daughter when she went through this abuse. She lost noticeable amounts of weight, and she was not the kid that I had sent to Roanoke College. She was a defeated young lady who had something stolen from her. Her passion for a sport that she loved was eviscerated. The injustice occupied her every thought, every spare moment. Her grades suffered. Everything suffered. And I hear a lot of discussion surrounding the mental well-being and acceptance of transgender athletes. For every one male athlete competing against women, there are countless women that become affected. Senator Britt, Katie to Katie, mom to mom.
Yes.
I think it's just too much pressure to put the burden of protesting these bad policies on the athletes. It's not up to them to have to do it. So where are the adults, and where is the concern for women and girls whose mental health and mental well-being is being assaulted? What can Congress do to put the responsibility on the schools to protect them?
Absolutely. So, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for supporting your daughter. And thank you for your willingness to stand up. And as you mentioned, your daughter coming together with 10 teammates, can you tell me, I can't even imagine what that took and the conversations between the two of you. Because as you mentioned, she said, I am a good person. I just know that this is unfair.
Yes.
Right? And so, and what brought that together?
Well, initially how their story came together, they were told that this man was going to be on their team, and all 17 girls on that team were completely opposed to it. They were brought into a meeting where the trans swimmer could address them and get their reasons for being on the team, and spoke of bettering their performances at their conference meet, doing better. If you don't let me compete, I'm going to jump off the Trexler building and kill myself, and it will be your fault. They were then asked to take a show of hands, and all but 3 or 4 girls said, no, you can be on the team, it's fine. Lily, as a captain, went to them afterwards, one by one. What happened? We were all united, we were all together. Nobody wanted to be held responsible for someone's suicide. They didn't want to be called a murderer. They didn't want to be called a hater. They knew it was wrong, but the girls all started looking to transfer, to change schools, to just not compete. And through talking with them, each one at a time, bringing about the only way we'll make a difference is if we stand together and we speak together. Behind closed doors, you will all say this, but we need to stand in front of people and say it, or no one will be heard. And she's coached a country club team and little kids every summer, and has said over and over, I have little cousins that are girls. All these girls I've taught to swim, it would be for nothing because they would never win. And when you get beat that badly, you don't want to compete.
Right. And I think that shows the pressure that our young athletes are under, and why adults do need to be in the room and continue the conversation and continue to support the dialogue. Both Senators Tuberville and Lummis said this, but we're all made in God's image, and this is not about hate. This is not, this
No.
is about fairness. This is about safety. To your point about knowing what a biological woman is capable of versus, as Senator Luna said, what a biological man is capable of. So I think we as parents, we as adults, do have to demand these conversations occur, and we have to support our young athletes in having them in a respectful, dignified way that allows them to still thrive. When it comes to our jobs, we're working diligently. This will happen on a local level, this will happen on a state level, and then you will see it happen here on a federal level. So last year, Senator Tuberville, and we were all very proud to join along this letter. And you saw the Biden administration come out and, essentially want to be able to, put a ban on states funding and such of when they want to just have biological women competing and versus allowing a biological man to compete in that. We all rallied around him to send that letter to ask for those rules to be rescinded. There are also a number of different legislative actions that are pending that we have that are moving. Senator Hyde-Smith has one that I'm sure that she'll talk about, a resolution, a women's bill of rights. Obviously, Senator Tuberville has the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act. So we are working diligently to do that so that when people want to protect biological women's sports, biological women competing against biological women, giving them the best chance of success, that they are allowed to do that. You have the federal intervention that denies that opportunity. What you're ultimately doing is denying opportunity for young women all across this country. So I think when these things occur, we have to have dialogue with our young athletes, and we have to support them. And we need parents like you to step up and be able to do that in a meaningful way. And then we need to act on it, which is what we are working to do and will continue to do. And when we take back the Senate next year, I have a feeling we'll be able to move some of this forward. And also, then if that's the case, then we'll be able to also have hearings where we're able to do this in a broader scale and ask these questions and bring light to them for the American people. So thank you.
Katie,
Um,
it's not for the athletes, the athletes.
That's
It's for
right.
coaches, administrators, athletic directors, people that get paid to do this. But they're a joke. I'll tell you, they won't fight. They go along with the norm. They're afraid of the pressure. They want to keep their job. That group doesn't fight back, we're going to lose. It can't be just the athletes. It's got to be the people in charge.
Coach, is there a role for us to go to the NCAA and say, knock it off? We've had enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's basically what our bills say. If we can get something federally done, then we can affect it. But of course, right now we're in the minority, so we can't get the bill on the floor. When I first got here, I had a bill on the floor about this, and I lost. I lost because it was 51 Democrats and 49 Republicans. And
I do want to talk, a little bit more specifics about what we can, action items at the end here. I want to make sure we hear from everybody. I will say that fear word, and I'm picturing those young women in that locker room having to receive that from that man. I'm not going to say biological, he's a man. And to threaten suicide. So what does that do? It shuts people down. They live with the fear. And then they're silenced after that. Your daughter was not silent. And I'm so proud of her for leading the way, because the silence is what has happened everywhere with the other women, with women who live my platform, with all the biggest star athletes, the silence, the television networks, they're all silent and it's deafening. So your little girl did good. Paula, you also, yay, have not been silent, and we're so grateful. Again, official introduction, an incredible athlete, certainly was at youth, and I know you still are now. Teammates with Leah Thomas at the University of Pennsylvania in the swim team, and you bravely spoke out about your experience of specifically sharing a locker room with a man, and of course, silence. You've been tried to silence you. It did not work, and we are so glad you're here.
Yes, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Just really quickly before I say what I've planned to say, it's so important to point out that the Roanoke girls were successful because they were united. My team is not successful because there's not 10 of us. There's one of us. I'm the only girl from the University of Pennsylvania swim team that has publicly spoken out about being unhappy with how we were treated and speaking about it being unfair for men to compete. And the reason for that is fear. And I saw it, and without that, we were unsuccessful, and we had to deal with everything I'm about to get into for an entire season because no one could speak up.
Real quick, did anyone come to you privately?
3 girls have come to me privately.
Out of how many?
40.
3 out of 40. Okay.
So that 3 girls have privately
Privately
admitted to me that they support what I'm doing. Just 3. And I think that really sets the tone for how much fear, because behind closed doors before the season happened, most people were in agreement that it was wrong. So we really have to paint that picture that the athletes are fearful, and we do need help to bring bigger names like yourself to stage. When you were speaking about it, it was wonderful. So I think that's what's so important. But obviously, thank you guys all for being here. I'm Paula Scanlon. I'm an ambassador for the Independent Women's Forum. And I'm a former NCAA swimmer at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm here to mostly talk about the importance of Title IX and how this affected me in my experience being teammates with Leah Thomas. So in September of 2021, Leah, formerly Will Thomas, switched from the Penn men's team to join my women's team. While Will had been an average swimmer on the men's team, Leah soon racked up personal best times in every freestyle event that shattered our team records. Well, many of you already know this, and the countless other stories we hear nowadays of female athletes falling victim to sex discrimination at the hand of inclusive policies. What you do not hear often enough is the experiences of the women off the podiums. I'd like to share mine. From the beginning, I was concerned about allowing Thomas to compete on the women's side. I was concerned not just with fair competition and trophies, but also with equal opportunity. Because what many people do not realize is that every time Thomas raced, a girl lost a lane in the pool. And every time Thomas traveled to a meet on behalf of Penn, a girl on our team was asked to stay home. It was not just Riley Gaines and the girls who raced Thomas who lost out. There are many, many girls that lost opportunities to race at the next level or even compete at all because Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division. Additionally, my teammates and I were forced to undress in the presence of Leah, a 6'4" tall man, fully intact with male genitalia, not once, not twice, but 18 times every single week. Some girls opted to change in bathroom stalls, and others used the family bathroom to avoid this. And when we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told Leah swimming on our team and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable. And we were offered psychological services as an attempt to re-educate us, to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a man. This was extremely uncomfortable for me in particular, as prior to attending the University of Pennsylvania, I was sexually assaulted. The swimming locker room had always been a safe space for me, a place where I felt comfortable. That is, until my university invited a male to undress alongside me. I began to have nightmares and mentally had to relive my own attack every week that I changed in that locker room. Many of us dealt with our discomfort by changing outside, and we were forced to change our behavior in order to accommodate the feelings of a male. The NCAA and universities are supposed to protect their athletes. Instead, they've chosen inaction and put the burden on athletes like myself to advocate for fairness, safety, and privacy in our own sports. Title IX was intended to provide female athletes with equal opportunities, and they've ignored this, and our leaders have been silent. This silence sets women back decades and erodes all the hard work that they put for Title IX and equal opportunity, and we need Congress's help to prevent female athletes from continued discrimination. So question for Senator Loomis. As a former college swimmer and a sexual assault survivor, I find it difficult to understand how Title IX, on one hand, pushes survivors to report assault so aggressively, yet put those same women at risk by putting them into dangerous situations. What can Congress do about that?
It really is a choice between stupid policy, crazy policy, and common sense. We need to move forward with legislation such as Coach has, Britt has, Senator Mike Smith has, about a women's Bill of Rights, especially when it comes to athletics. It's a great place to start because it is so patently and obviously wrong to the majority of Americans that I think that there's some opportunity to move forward in the next Congress. And I think there's a chance also, if we have a change in the presidency, to move forward in a way. It's sad that I don't understand why this is political. I thought the opposing party to mine, I'm a Republican, I thought the opposing party was the Women's Party. I mean, that's where all of these suburban women are voting in theory. Why aren't they with us? It just baffles I'm boggled by this. So I think we're going to be in a better position to move forward in 2025, and we need to make it a top priority. Katie, thank you for your remarks, because I frequently forget what it was like to be a high school and college age girl. You just don't have the same confidence that the men have. You have been innately trained to be empathetic. So if a guy comes to you and says, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to commit suicide, I would have probably folded my tent too, and then been mad at myself for not having the gumption to stand up and say, you're not putting that on me. So we can't allow this to stand. I'm so proud of people like Martina Navratilova and J.K. Rowling, who has also been a good voice. Women who know the difference between a man and a woman and know this is, and thankfully coaches here to help lead the charge.
Well, for us up here, everything's about politics, okay? Everything's about Republican, Democrat. This is not a Republican, Democrat problem. This is a American problem. It's common sense.
Yeah.
You don't do what's going on here. I have asked the 10, 12 ladies on the Democratic side that have voted against me consistently about this. I ask them, do you have daughters? Do you have granddaughters? Do you really believe this? Do you really believe this? Are you going to vote against this just because it's party line? That's wrong.
What do they say?
They don't have an answer. They don't have an answer. So you know they don't believe it. They vote. That's the problem in Washington, D.C. People vote party line instead of common sense. And for people in this country, the citizens. And so it's unfortunate. But I go back to that point, and then the point of the coaches and the administrators that have no guts to step out and do what's right and put their job on. You get fired, but you stand up for what's right.
I think that's the most, probably the most disappointing thing, is that the adults in the room, as they say, have failed our girls. And I also empathize, and I'm choked up as you were telling your story as a mother, because moms want to do what we want to come fix it, and we can't. And then we're trying to empower them and encourage them to use their voice and stand tall, and then look what happens. But yeah, coaches at Roanoke, coaches at UPenn failed. The lacrosse coach at Oberlin College did not fail. She's kind of amazing, and the fact that she's in this room is awesome. 27 years as a lacrosse coach, and after you openly supported female-only sports, you were fired from your job, and have been so courageous to come out as well after that, because I believe that's what they depend on, is the fear, which keeps so many of us silent. So, Coach Kim Russell, we are so glad you're here. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Sage, and thank you, senators, for being here, for listening to all of us. As Sage said, I'm Coach Kim Russell. I'm an ambassador with the IWF, and now get to advocate for girls and women's sports. Women's sports have been my entire life. I was 5 when Title IX was passed. They've also been my passion. In college, I was able to play 2 sports at the D1 level, both field hockey and lacrosse. And I've been a women's lacrosse coach now for almost 28 years. I've been inducted into 3 halls of fame for my contributions to the game of lacrosse, and was recently, in January, appointed to the Women in Sport Commission for World Lacrosse, the governing body for the sport of lacrosse worldwide. Many of my players still affectionately refer to me as the hippie love coach, not only because I'm a yoga instructor, I'm often barefoot, I read energy and coach intuitively, but because I've given countless individuals a safe space to thrive and to feel a sense of belonging. I've coached running down the sideline while nursing one child, having another one on my back in a backpack, while a third runs with me. This was a few years ago. I am a woman through and through. Never in a million years did I think I could be sitting here at 56, fighting to get back the rights that were given to women and girls almost 52 years ago. When I accepted the job at Oberlin College as a head women's lacrosse coach and wellness instructor in August of 2018, I was so excited to be part of an institution known for its academic rigor, open-minded dialogue, and freedom to express oneself. And then I learned the truth. Oberlin, like many institutions of higher ed these days, only supports free speech when your values align with theirs. I learned this firsthand when I spoke out against biological males competing in women's sports. As my kids say, Mama, you've been canceled twice. Canceled simply for saying what federal law requires, that women and men are entitled to equal athletic opportunities, opportunities that are not possible without single-sex sport. The drafters of Title IX and of its original implementing regulations understood this basic point. Unfortunately, the current administration does not. This spring, they are releasing new regulations that expressly contradict Title IX statutory mandate, now allowing trans-identifying males to take opportunities to compete away from women, to say nothing of trophies and awards. Already, we are seeing schools use these proposed regulations as justification for squelching speech. They say that if, according to the Biden administration, keeping males off of women's teams violates Title IX, then protesting males on women's teams likewise violates the statute. In other words, in a sickly, ironic twist, they claim that defending women's rights is itself a violation of a statute intended to grant women equal opportunities. Because schools are using these rules as a license to squash dissent, many will choose to stay silent, as we've seen. They do not want to be accused of sex discrimination or hate or risk losing their jobs. I will never apologize for believing that women and girls should have the right to single-sex competition. I'm hoping that my speaking up will give other coaches, administrators, faculty, parents, and athletes the courage to do the same. At the very least, coaches and administrators must stop telling young women to stay silent and to accept losing or losing a spot or having to undress in a locker room to a male. They must stop telling young women to accept having a fully intact male in their locker rooms. Let's be honest about what is happening here. Young women are being groomed to accept discrimination. They are being groomed to compare their bodies to the bodies of hormonally impaired males, and they are being groomed to accept men in their private spaces. I want to know, where is the Me Too movement now? You senators have the opportunity to be heroes. This is about upholding truth, preserving the dreams of female athletes, and preserving the original meaning of Title IX. I hope and already know that you are acting to do so. Thank you. My question for you, Coach Tuberville. As a coach, I would like to know why you think coaches are so reluctant to speak out to protect their athletes. And I know we've already talked about this now. And is there a way we can work to activate other coaches to become involved?
Well, you know as well as I, you're not scared. I can tell the way you talk. You mean what you say. You and I both have been in a profession that's supposed to deal with truth and honesty and building up the number one commodity in our country. It's our young people. That's our number one commodity. Give them the opportunity to grow. We want them to have that opportunity, fair and square. Okay. But I see so many people in the coaching profession that refused to make a wave. They don't want to upset anybody. They like their job. They want to keep their job. And as coaches, you're as important as law enforcement officers, military, because you have a firsthand view stand up, and hopefully they respect you for what you do and what you stand for. And so I'm disappointed. And I know you're disappointed. And I know Paul is disappointed in the fact that coaches, not all, but a huge portion are not speaking out today. There should be a huge rally in this, what we call the capital of our country, about what's going on. We saw it in the Me Too movement. We see it during abortion or anti-abortion group. The importance of this for women is unbelievable, because our leaders come from all areas, but a lot of them are starting to come from sports. We have, Cynthia, 20 in the Senate, women in the Senate, at least 20, maybe a few more. And I guarantee most of them played sports, and they learned a lot of their values from that. So coaches and administrators, who have already said, stand up for your athletes or get out of the profession. That's what's got to happen.
Like I asked fellow coach, did you hear from any other fellow coaches at Oberlin or elsewhere?
I did. I heard from many coaches at Oberlin, from across the lacrosse world, from really every sport. After I spoke publicly, I had thousands of emails, direct messages. My personal cell phone number was published on Oberlin's website, so I had texts, phone calls, and every single one of them was in support, from coaches, from parents, from current students, from grandparents, from people who were so upset at the egregiousness of this. And what I would like to also add, after speaking at a radical feminist conference this weekend, every single one of them there was on the same side. So what I asked of them is that they reach out to their Democratic representatives to make sure they know that every single one of these women believe the same thing. And so why has this become a partisan issue?
That is what's so shocking to me. The
Speak up.
radical feminists should be with us.
They are. And so I will also say that a majority of the women at this conference were lesbians, and they are very upset that they are being put in this group, because they are all completely on board with the women's rights.
And when you asked them, or when you heard from them, then I assume we're corresponding a little bit with some. What was their reason for not standing up where they worked, where they coached?
Oh, fear. Absolutely.
So it's consistent.
Yeah, the fear. And what I will tell you is that truth, this is truth. This is about truth, nothing less. And truth is the answer here. Truth is the highest vibration, right? And you also cannot have love and fear in the same place. So if you are truly loving the human body, right? And where is our belief that we were born in the right bodies? And where is that belief that we've taught girls their entire life to honor their bodies, to take care, and not just girls, but boys as well, right? So every single coach I've talked to is on the same page. They're just staying in fear. And some were afraid to even text.
Well, especially because things are tracked. I hear that too. You know,
Yes.
hey, we're not going to text. I'll call you later.
Yeah.
So the fear, unfortunately, is legitimate. Like
Exactly.
We've seen that.
Yeah.
Senator Hyde-Smith, thank you. I'm so glad to see you here. It has been, we've been rolling a little bit, maybe choked up a couple of times, and I think it speaks to how much everyone in this room cares, and I think we're speaking for I know we are, millions of other people as well, who just want fairness and just love seeing the progress that women have made since 1972, since that fight, really came to fruition. Is there anything that you'd like to say, or we still have Jennifer Braceras that we wanted to introduce for the legal aspect, but I wanted to make sure to welcome you.
Well, thank you, and I so appreciate you being here. I so appreciate the Tuberville doing what he's doing, and this is too important. We fought too hard, we came too far. My mother's 86 years old. She was a point guard. She said, "Cindy, don't let them ruin women's sports." So I was a point guard. My daughter was a point guard. You got a defender here.
Oh, that means you take control of the game and other things apparently, which we love. Hi, Jennifer. Let me give you your formal introduction. It's so impressive. A Harvard Law graduate, an expert on Title IX law, a former member of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and has taught courses on civil rights, correct, and constitutional law at both Boston College Law School and Suffolk University Law School. There's been so much mention of Title IX today for obvious reasons, and I love that you have an expert in the house. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about Title IX because as much as we really appreciate all of the bills that have been introduced to protect women's sports, Title IX should already protect women's sports. Title IX, lots of people think that it's a sports bill. It's not specifically a sports bill. Title IX does one thing and one thing only. It outlaws sex discrimination in education, period. That includes sports, just as it includes scholarships, academic exercises, admissions, things like that. It covers all aspects of the educational experience, and it prohibits schools from discriminating against students because they're either male or female, and it requires that they offer equal opportunities to both males and females. And that should be the end of it. Unfortunately, it's not. And the reason these bills are so important is to clarify for people who, clearly don't understand what discrimination means, that this is not meant to eliminate single-sex athletics. Sports are different than other aspects of the educational experience because, unlike academics, with sports, there can be no equal opportunity without separating males and females. Because if you only had one team and you said, okay, everybody has an equal opportunity to try out for the team, the reality is that women wouldn't make the team, or only one woman would make the team once in a while. So in order to comply with Title IX and provide equal opportunities for females, schools have to provide separate teams for women. And indeed, my daughters played field hockey. Field hockey and also women's volleyball are two sports that many high schools added after Title IX was passed in 1972 in order to create more opportunities for women. So these teams were brought in, and that's why you see a lot of schools, they don't offer men's field hockey, and they often don't offer men's volleyball because these were extra spots they needed to create so that they could have equal number of male and female athletes. So, we talk a lot about fairness when we talk about schools that have allowed men to compete in women's sports. And, the science is clearly on our side. We've issued a report, a competition report, which I think all of you have, that documents the scientific athletic advantage that men have over female athletes. But the statute itself isn't a fairness law, it's a discrimination law. And so even were it possible to level the playing field and somehow make it fair for a man to compete against a woman, a school would still be violating Title IX because, as Paula said, when they let a man on the team, they're denying a woman an opportunity to compete in a particular race. As Coach understands more than anybody, rosters are limited. You could only roster a certain number of people. You could only take a certain number of people. You can only dress a certain number of athletes to go to your games. So even if people like to say, oh, let's just be inclusive, let's just make room for one more, that's not possible, because even if the women who are still on the team, they might lose playing time. They lose access to other resources. They may not be offered the scholarship to play. So this is discrimination, and the NCAA and the governing bodies keep talking about this in terms of fairness as if there's a way they can make it fair. If men only lower their testosterone levels to a the level of women, then it will be fair and nobody will be violating Title IX. That is a lie. Title IX is violated every time a girl gets pushed down to the JV team because a boy took her spot, every time that a girl is left back in the dorm when her team goes to a meet. It doesn't matter if the men win. We only see it when Leah Thomas is standing on a podium. But the discrimination is happening much more often, and it's happening all the time. Leah Thomas was not a one-off. It happened at NCAA's Division III just last week in running. It's happening in high schools across the country. It is the most underreported story in the news because people are afraid to speak out. And I want to thank the senators because in addition to the legislation that you've offered, which is so important, supporting Paula and Katie and Kim and doing it publicly is the way we're going to get people to come forward, because what you are saying is the federal government stands behind these women. You are standing behind these brave women, and and you're telling other people that if they come forward, they will not be alone. They will have Senator Tuberville in their corner, and Senator Hyde-Smith, and Senator Lummis, and so many others. And that is really one of the greatest gifts you are giving to this movement.
Jennifer's moving up to the Olympics.
Yes, it
The
is.
Olympics just allows now boxing. It's allowing men to box against women.
Of all sports.
Yes, it is. And I know there's been legislation introduced about that, and there are brave women coming out about that. Former Olympian Monique and Jocelyn Lamoureux, who were on the women's ice hockey team, have 3 medals. They've come out now and opposed what's happening at the Olympic level. And by giving women like that a platform and showing your support for them, that's what's going to make people feel more courageous to come forward. So
But
thank you.
allowing that to happen is going to create a tougher problem for us at lower levels. But to see that, you're going to see more men jumping into the women's, you know.
And that's why when we talk about the adults in the room and the coaches, yes, but it is the leagues, and the
adults in the room.
the adults in the room on every level, absolutely. And there are some, NXXT, that the golf, Federation Cup, they had a man kind
There's
of
one
win.
right there.
Sorry,
Kim said, no, we're not going to do this.
right.
And it
But I'm
cost her. And it cost her.
dearly. But I know you don't have regrets either, because you know you are doing the absolute right thing. There are groups, I did want to point out that golf group that did say, okay, because there was a controversy after he came on and won, and then one more, and he would have qualified potentially for the LPGA Tour. They got crushed on social media. And
But
guess what?
Let's be honest, it took a
That
lot of pressure to get
it
them
took
to
a
do the
ton.
right thing.
And
there
so-
are a lot
and so
of
it's
people
not-
working behind the scenes.
For sure. Less than
Like these
ideal,
young
but the
ladies.
point is what? That, okay, it shouldn't have to be, but if it is, then we need to be obnoxious and out there with those things. Can I ask you a question? Because
Well, I just had a question for Senator Hyde,
Sure.
if it's okay. I know, in addition to supporting these women, which is so important, I understand there's movement afoot, perhaps have some sort of resolution to push back against the Biden administration's regulations. I don't know if you could tell us what Senate has planned to object to those regulations, which basically the regulations, it's, Kim talked about the irony. The irony of the regulations is that they tell people it's a violation of Title IX to enforce Title IX. So they're clearly not, legal, but what can the Senate do to assert its authority?
Well, it's just more insanity when they say it's a violation to violate. It's an insanity to say that. I think we can recruit more supporters. We can get out there. Anybody with rational thinking abilities knows this is wrong. And, we've got 100 senators, and I really don't know of anything they're scared of. When you get here, you're pretty much not scared of anything. But, and I understand the positions where people are employed, they're afraid of losing their job. But we should all be speaking out. I want to be your advocate. Everybody up here wants to be your advocate. Katie Britt wants to be your advocate. But we just have to recruit more people to, and I've said before, if you don't have a backbone, I was born with 2 and I'll loan you one of mine. Be glad to.
Jennifer, if I could ask,
Yeah.
because I hear this a lot, and I think on social media a lot as well, when people say, but it's such a small percentage. It's only, 0.0, first of all, I don't know where they get those numbers. I think they're pulling them out of thin air to prove their case. What should our response be?
Oh, I have a lot to say about that. Well, first and foremost, when you're talking about discrimination, it doesn't matter if one person or 1,000. If Rosa Parks were the only person told to go to the back of the bus, it still would have been wrong. So it doesn't matter how.
Can I use that? I'll credit you.
Say whatever you want. I will also say that it's not just, they can speak in terms of percentages, but there are over 500 male athletes who have stolen women's titles or trophies from female athletes. And
What scope?
in all sports at different levels. That's what we've been able to, track so far. But this is just beginning to explode because the number of people who identify as trans is increasing in the younger generations. And so as those people come up and enter high school or enter college, you're going to see this happening a lot more. So it is happening more often than you think. It is an unreported story at the high school and middle school level. It's happened in several towns near where I live in Massachusetts, and you just hear whispers about it, and the parents don't want to say anything. It's no one even reports it to the media. It only gets in the media when someone gets hurt, which did happen last month in a basketball game in Worcester County in Massachusetts. And that did get some television coverage because people got hurt. But it is happening a lot. And the other thing I would say, and I think either Katie or Paula spoke about this, is that even one male athlete on a women's team there's exponential harm that's done to multiple women, because it's not just the one person that he might beat in a race who's harmed. It's the people who were left behind. It's the people who had to share a locker room. And also that person may have competed in multiple races. And it's not just about who wins. It's about who gets named All-American. It's about who gets named to the Olympic team. So when Laurel Hubbard, the male weightlifter from New Zealand, was added to the Olympic roster for that country, everybody said, well, look, Laurel Hubbard didn't win anything at the Olympics, so it doesn't matter. It didn't hurt women. Well, there was a woman from New Zealand who will never get to call herself an Olympian because of Laurel Hubbard. And that's discrimination.
So if there are constant violations happening everywhere, how? I mean, do people have to file lawsuits? Like, if it's a violation and nothing's happening, what are we doing wrong?
Are there lawsuits? There are probably lawsuits.
Well, yes, I mean, eventually this will all percolate up to the Supreme Court. It will make its way up there, and I think it will be resolved in our favor. But in the meantime, yes, people need to bring lawsuits. I mean, people are afraid just to speak, just to say, just to post on social media, this is wrong. Bringing a lawsuit is a whole nother level of commitment. It takes resources, it takes money. Nobody really wants to sue their own athletic director, or their school, because they like their school. They don't want to take money from the school. There's political pressure, social pressure not to do that. So we need, by supporting women and coming forward, we also need to support them legally.
I live in Connecticut, and 4 or 5 years ago, I think that's when that case of the young track stars. Yeah, I mean, and my Chelsea, she's went to high school with my daughter, and she's always, get out of the way so fast. And then all of a sudden, what happens? She went from state champion to the fastest time potentially to second place.
And they did bring a law.
They did, and they've gone back and forth, correct? They were shut down, and then they brought it back to the Supreme Court.
So their lawsuit, essentially what the judge said, and this is something that's often common with students when they bring any type of lawsuit, is the judge said, well, you graduated, so the point is moot. They appealed that, and they won on appeal, but the Court of Appeals said, and again, this goes to the discrimination point, not the fairness point. The judge said, no, there's still a live injury because these girls are suing to change the record books. And so that's why it's so important to talk about this in terms of equal opportunity and lost opportunities. Even though it's no longer unfair to them, they're not competing anymore against these men. What's still being denied them is the records. So now it's going back to the lower court. And these things take time.
That's the
legal
problem.
system moves
So
forward.
when you mentioned that eventually you think it'll be ruled in our favor in the Supreme Court, I mean, that's years, right? Potentially.
That's years, but in the meantime, perhaps we'll get some legislation passed that, makes it more obvious to schools what they need to do. The problem is schools are being told by this particular administration, they're being lied to. And they're being told by this administration, if you don't let a man compete on a women's team, you're violating Title IX. I mean, it's completely convoluted because it's the opposite. But this administration is deliberately twisting the law and telling schools this lie. And they're telling them that if they don't do it their way, they're going to lose their federal funding. It's blackmail, basically.
100%. And I'm so fearful because I keep running through my mind that scene with your daughter and you being the only one and having to go 18 times a week, you said, to change with Thomas. So I don't know if that's how we tug at their heartstrings and beg for their humanity to come out is to continue to do that and get personal and deep. And I mean, I know through my little trials and tribulations, which are nothing compared to yours, that how lonely it can feel. And especially when you're young, when you're a kid, basically when all of this began. And that's why it is important to do it together and to find other parents and moms and coaches, because then the fear goes away a little bit when you know you're in a group. That is why on social media, you quite often see people saying, well, if all the girls on the golf team would stand up and not play, this will go away. Probably true, because there's money involved and professional sports as well. Obviously, it shouldn't take that.
We can't ask them to give up their scholarships and their playing time and right. But what you saw with Leah Thomas was something very interesting. They did not walk away. They did not stand up at the time. But what they did do at NCAA at Harvard was in the only race that Leah was not. This wasn't NCAA. It was the Ivy League Championships. In the race where Leah wasn't racing, the 8 girls from all 8 schools came out holding hands. That was a silent protest. That was their way of saying, we don't approve of this. But that was all they could do because if they wanted to stay on the team. And so again, that's why we need the adults, right? Everybody in this room speak for them.
And they've worked their entire lives for this moment. And the mental health aspect is so crucial as well, because we know what that does for us as girls and women with the confidence to be able to have a dream and to walk into a room and to have a conversation with a male professor. That's what sports teaches you. It's so much bigger than winning and losing. Any final comments or ideas that anyone would like to share?
Well, I'm going to say the obvious thing. Elections have consequences.
Yes.
And we have an election this year. And hopefully that we take the Senate. And because we in the Senate, you still have to get 60 votes. We won't have 60. And so we're going to have to plead to our cohorts on the left to make a common sense decision to save women's sports. If this doesn't happen, if it continues to go the way it's going, we will not have women's sports.
And you know, Coach, I think they will be with us because they know what's wrong. They know what's happening is wrong.
Exactly.
And
But even
so
they are fearful, which is incredible to me.
I think they are fearful. And that's why what you're doing is so virtuous. And I hate it for you that you've been through what you've been through. I hate it that your daughter went through what she went through. But what you're doing now is more virtuous than what you gave up, because you can help other people avoid the indignities and the unfairness that you've been through and help restore a sense of sanity in sports and just in women's dignity in society. I mean, it's, as Coach said, it's bigger than sports. And you're all fighters. You're all warriors in the very best way. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing, standing up. This does take courage. You know, I know what it's like to stand up and your voice is shaking because, you know, it's just all pent up inside here. And so when you let go and say what your heart is telling you to say and do it for the right reasons, it's gonna make a difference. Thank you all.
Cindy, don't you have a women's bill of rights? Something that you were working on?
We do.
Yeah.
We do have that and getting support for it. And I mean, you just think, really, is this even necessary? But the sad fact is it is necessary. And you just think, when is logic, sanity going to enter and say, this is so obvious? We will do anything we can do. And I'm pretty good at twisting arms on the other side too.
She is. She does have two spines, by the way.
But you just have to, when things matter as serious as this is, this matters. This is my whole heart. And that's when you do grow that stiffness that, yeah, I can go do this. But, you know, we have the microphone, we have the platform so many times, and I assure you, we're going to be using it to benefit this and to try to bring some sanity to it. And as Coach said, elections matter. This administration is looking at this just totally through the wrong lens because they want to. Elections matter. We have got to empower people to get out, vote, and change this.
I love that we have a room full of fighters and you four, and thank you for your expertise in fighting at that level. That's everything. Thank you, and for your courage, which continues because it's gonna be a long haul. I'll just end with this because it's something that has, pulled me through a million things through the years, personally, professionally. My dad went to West Point. He actually broke the color barrier. The first Black man never to play varsity football. He went through all kinds of stuff and wouldn't change a thing. But as kids, as an Army brat, as we talked earlier, we were forced to memorize part of the West Point cadet prayer. And it was, annoying. And we had our Saturday morning room inspections as well. It's the whole thing. I survived. I had great arms as a young child because we had a lot of push-ups if our rooms were a mess. That has since failed. The part of the prayer that resonates with me every day of my life is this: help me to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and to never be content with a half truth when the whole can be one. As a kid, you don't want to hear it. Then you go, oh gosh, it's so true. The harder right is to do what you are doing. It is easier to stay silent, easier to live in fear. We've all done that too. Then you just reach a line, and then you have to say enough. And that's obviously what you've done. And to not be content with that half truth. We all know the whole truth. We know what it is. And we got some fighters in this room, and I believe that, like you said, it's going to be turned around and we're going to win, and this will all be worth it. And you can say that you're at the forefront of it all. So thank you. And thank you to what you're doing here, for what you're doing here every single day. We need you. Thank you. Thank you.
And this will be YouTube, and I'll let people all over the country see this. So thanks for everybody speaking their voice, because this can't be prolonged. It got to stop now.
Yep.
Because once it gets fingers in the hold of what's going on right now, we won't be able to stop. I've seen it in sports all my life. This has to stop. And so we don't have much time. Kim, thank you for dedicating what you did. Thank you for what you're doing and going to continue to do. Bless both of y'all. Thank you. Thank you. And your daughter. Goodness. And what you had to go through. It's amazing. I just hope people listen. Please listen. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.